Also this week I've been lucky enough to find several interesting pieces of timber. Firstly, these two pieces of very old, what appear to be a Burr brown oak, found in a barn there for several decades. Also a couple of pieces of wormy laburnum, but of decent size nevertheless. They will yield something interesting. And lastly but not least, a lump of old, what appears to be Burr ash. Now, on top of that, during the week I also picked up this nice piece of hawthorn, which was a storm casualty from a neighbour's garden. Hello, William here again, and thank you for joining me. Now, last week sometime I saw on Instagram, Facebook, something somewhere, a little lidded box which I thought was very neat design and quite interesting, and something I could have a go at this week. I couldn't find it again, so I don't know who to credit the idea or the design to, but I'm sure somebody might remind me. So the concept is, I've got a piece of apple wood here that came from a neighbour's Bramley tree, and a piece of very old Burr oak which came from a project I finished a couple of years ago. So the concept is that the Burr oak will be the lid and the apple will be the box itself. Now, there's enough wood in the apple to mount the piece in the C-jaws on the chuck, but the lid, the piece of Burr oak, will need to be mounted on a sacrificial glue block. Now, I've seen on social media a couple of times this winter of people losing faith in glue blocks because they've failed for some reason. Well, somebody taught me some time ago that if you put hot glue onto a cold surface, it's likely to fail, and that's, when you think about it, quite obvious, because the glue is going to go hard before it has a chance to stick. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mount this first, but I'm going to use a heat gun to heat both surfaces before I apply the hot glue. Okay, I'm just going to set my heat gun to about 150 and heat up the two surfaces. It doesn't take long to get them nice and warm, actually. Half a minute. It's only 10 degrees in my workshop, so it's actually too cold to do this without using the heat gun. I've marked out the limit of glue on the Burr oak piece. As I said before, I've seen somebody do this on YouTube and I can't for the life of me remember who it was. Okay, so I'll just bring up the tail stock to hold it in place, but not putting on so much pressure that it's in fact going to squeeze all the glue out. That'll take about 15-20 minutes to set nice and hard. So initially then we need to mount the piece between centres to put a tenon on so it can fit in the C-jaws. Here I'm just fitting a 40mm Forstner bit to the Jacob's chuck to drill a 40mm pilot hole through the length of the piece. I had to fit the extension rod for the Forstner bit to get the required 130mm depth of cut. Moving on now then to the hollowing process, and I'm going to go straight in with my Simon Hope 6mm MIDI hollowing tool. So finally, for the inside, I'm going to use the Robert Sorby side cut scraper. Okay, I'm just applying 2 coats of sanding sealer here. The first coat will be thinned with cellulose sanding sealer, and the second coat will be full strength, as it were. Okay, so whilst profiling the lip for the lid, a small knot in the top here flew out, which means I have to now cut it back to remove this. In the meantime, moving across to the other lathe, just starting work on the lid. The concept is I'll profile the bottom of the lid on this lathe, then marry the two together to finish it off. Now at this point I decided to be adventurous and to add some colour to the lid, trying out some flame and then some ruby intrinsic colours. Now eventually, after spilling significant quantities of both colours, I decided on the ruby. Okay then, that's the lid nearly finished. A very good fit, I'm pleased with that. So now just to add some colour and to sand it back, because the colour will raise the grain of course. And finally some sanding sealer and Hampshire sheen high gloss. Now at this point I decided the lid needed a stalk type knob to finish it off. So I'm going to turn one from one of the offcuts from my 400-year-old oak projects. So after the abrasive work, I'm going to part off the piece at an angle to make it look like a stalk. Also, I'm going to stain this stalk with the forest colour, which is green, from the intrinsic colour range. And finally I gave all the components, the lid, the stalk and the box itself, a good buffing up on the buffing wheel with Hampshire sheen high gloss. Okay, so there we have it, a very simple lidded box made from the wood of a Bramley apple tree, and the lid and the stalk made from oak. Now, I wasn't quite sure as this project evolved whether or not I was going to get away with colouring the lid red and green as I did, but to be honest I think I got away with it. Now, halfway through the development of this current project, Mike Walt uploaded a new YouTube video with a very innovative idea on using hex nuts incorporated into the makeup of glue boxes. Now, if you haven't seen Mike's excellent video on this glue block adaptation, I suggest you hop across to his channel at some stage and have a look. I'll certainly be looking at this again next week and having a go myself, because I think it's an extremely useful concept. So, thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see you all again next week.